Hi, everyone. Welcome to another amazing topic of conversation. I want to thank my sponsors, the Health Channel. So please sign up for their newsletter for anything regarding your health. And if you need a space to work, whether it's a virtual office or an hour or a boardroom, Alexa's Workspaces can help you. So, Channing, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I really wanted to do this while the Olympics is still going
Yes.
because there has been a lot of conversation regarding the opening night.
I think that's
And
a really nice way to
so
put it.
you have an
Conversation.
event background. I have an event background, and I wanted
Uh-huh.
to share your thoughts because I know we have heard everything from wow to what did they do?
I think that is a very nice way to put it. And I have lots of thoughts to share, both from like the production side of things, but also just communications and where I think things were done really well and then where they could have been done better. Because I think we can all acknowledge like there was, I mean, to say that they needed a crisis communication plan is an understatement for what was needed after the Olympics, like the opening ceremonies was over. So did they do it well? Did they not? We can go into that.
Really?
Uh-huh.
So
Oh yeah.
my wish list have always been to work in an Olympic opening. I think the people that do Olympic opening are extremely creative,
Oh, for sure. Like it was an incredibly artistic,
artistic.
multi different locations, multiple sensors that like sensory options that were there. There's so much for that. I agree. Like you have to have a very out of the box wow moment kind of thinking as like a natural gift, I think, in order to really bring this to light. And knowing that if you're going to be on a world stage, that also means you have the world's worth of opinions that are going to be coming at you.
So let's start because I know that if we open it to an open conversation, we're never gonna finish,
Yes.
right? What was your wow moment?
So I actually have a couple of them. The one that actually stands out to me was not necessarily a wow moment, it was a wow factor that was in many moments. The special effects that were used throughout this ceremony, why is no one talking about this? From the colored smoke at the very beginning, right, with like the French flag during the parade of athletes, there was the water show actually happening like as they were going down the river. The streamers with the Marie Antoinette thing, the pyro with that very famous French performer with the gold carpet. She walks the gold carpet. I'm going to butcher her name, so I'm going to try not to say that. But like the lasers with Celine, like there were so many special effects that you had this really big performer or very big dance something, but there was also all of this atmospheric stuff going on around them, and I loved it. I'm like, why was no one talking about the fire and the smoke and like the lasers? Like this stuff is awesome.
Well, my one moment was that they literally used the whole venue, the whole Paris as a
Whole
venue,
city.
the
I
whole city.
I cannot imagine the logistics of that, and
The
I'm really
logistics,
not
we'll
my
talk
job.
about it in a few minutes, but they also, my wow moment was like the unknown guy that took the
The
torch
torch. Yeah.
and literally went throughout the city, making it a moment for the people who were not in Paris to experience what Paris was. And they brought in the history.
You just said the key word there, and I think it's history. It makes it actually to that point, it made me think about do you remember this Disney movie that came out a while ago? It was called The Princess and the Frog. And it was the first, Tiana was the first Black princess for Disney. So it was a very big deal. But that movie was set in New Orleans. And as someone from New Orleans, a big conversation that a lot of us had were like the scenes, the culture they wrapped into that, the different venues they went to in this like animated movie. It was a love letter to New Orleans. It was all the things that we love about that city. And that's what Paris reminded me of, is that they went to all these different places. They brought in and even called out some of the touristy aspects, like Paris is known as the city of love. So let's do a whole section, right, about love
Correct.
and romance. But they leaned into it rather than saying, no, 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 we're not going to do that. That's the worst, right? I mean, of
But
course,
they
I'm an
brought
American saying
in
that, but
every little detail that had to do, for example, for me, there were two things that really stood out.
yeah.
One was the whole story on how the medals were made, and then the gold dance, like through the whole water with the gold backdrop. That was amazing.
Okay, so that was also one of my wow moments. I want to go further into this one before we go on, because I do think I thought it was brilliant the way that they brought education of the medals, right, into an artistic performance. Like, oh my goodness. Again, water, big water
The
show
water,
during
and in the back
this.
it was
And they
lights
were
of, it was like colored
it was like the
paper, gold
filament,
paper,
yeah.
but the
Um,
effect.
the effect was awesome. And then add into it that, which those dancers out of all of them, I think were the most in sync and on beat. Because I have some
No,
criticisms of
but
the other ones, but the way that they incorporated the Louis Vuitton,
oh
hello,
yeah,
humongous brand moment there. Like the
that
fact that
was a real branding moment.
was a brand moment that they knew, which I didn't know until then, that the boxes, like that all of the medals were going to actually be given to the athletes in this like Louis Vuitton box. Like that's how they were pulling them out to present them. So I thought it was a good teaser, but they also took the behind the scenes of what it takes to make them. So they're really showcasing an iconic French brand and the craftsmanship that actually goes into it. Because I think a lot of people will
Yeah,
see
it
that.
wasn't just the brand, like, okay, let's just bring a Louis Vuitton box and that was it.
Correct.
From a logistics point of view, it was raining
I know.
and there was no coordination. Like literally, when you walk in the rain, drops fall in your hair, in your face, and
Yeah.
they didn't even spark an uncoordinating moment.
I know. I was impressed because I don't tend to go dancing in the rain. But I do run in the rain and like it's gross. Like there's
Yeah,
sometimes it's one of those that like there's no way around it. You just like it starts raining in the middle of a race or run, like you've got to get home, so you keep doing it. But it does add that extra challenge. So like I want to know what those dancers were all thinking. And if it's just simply don't fall, just don't fall. Hit the note, just don't fall, just don't fall. That's what
so
I'd be thinking. It's like just don't step
that
on
would
this
have been
world
what they
stage.
were thinking. The other moment that I thought, or the other thing that I thought, was that they managed to combine every music genre possible.
Yeah, I really hated the heavy metal, but I appreciated
I
that they put
because
it
I
in
don't like heavy metal either,
there.
but
Exactly.
in all fairness, they managed to put heavy metal on the saddest moment in history for France. And
Well,
look
again,
what they did. Marie Antoinette, they told a story
yes.
and she was decapitated, which was brilliantly done.
Which I was going to say, let's also bring in not only in those doors, like that building, having the different Marie Antoinettes, but also then, hello again, special effects, the red streamers,
The
blood
red
everywhere. Like,
tinting even the river,
it was so
symbolizing the blood. So
intense.
that was, yeah, I know you love it. But for example, then we go to the oops when there was a lot of people saying, how could they, how could they show a decapitated woman? Or,
Or
and
let's
that really
talk about
hurt because it wasn't in that sense. It was really historical.
so I want to I want to clarify a point here when we say go to people talking about these things. I believe it's Americans that I have read kicking up the most like dust about this,
Yeah.
unfortunately. To which my first look is just maybe we need to like and this goes into the theme I think that needs to be for the entire rest of this year, before we go throwing opinions out online, let's take a step back and do some research. Let's find out if we actually know what we're talking about before we say
Correct. Let's find out
because it's not
history.
just this random decapitated head, which also
No.
it kind of, I think the red streamers symbolize the blood in an incredibly creative and tasteful way.
Yes.
It's not like they were taking big buckets of red paint and throwing that on people,
No, no,
which
no. It was done
so it's
exquisite,
still a
I
very
have to say.
family friendly show. Because if nothing else, I see that and I just think like if you have a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old that's watching this and they say, well, why does that woman not have a head?
You
Well,
tell them the
child, this
story.
teachable moment. Exactly. This is a
Correct.
teachable moment. Instead, like yelling about it is just, I mean, I think it's in general the ones that want to kick up a storm about any of this. If we don't know history, we really are doomed to repeat it. So, like, you may not like it. I don't love it. There's a lot of history, we collectively share as Jewish women that we don't love, but it doesn't mean we don't know it, right? You have to know the history if you want.
Or find out.
Exactly. Like, do some research.
Do some research.
Or
The
ask.
other part that I thought was fascinating was the underground and how they took the torch on the underground on the boat. So they literally took advantage of every single corner.
I don't know. I have so many questions for the logistics person who was overseeing, like, because
Well, I
you
have
have
a
producer, you have
theory.
someone else to take all of the cameras with that to make sure it's going to work, to get the permits to get
I
under
don't
there.
think they
Like,
took all the cameras. I think they did it
bring a
in
camera.
stages. I
They
literally
still have to
think,
get permitting for that, right? Like that's,
well,
and then
no
figure out how to
permitting
stream
because
it
it
together.
was, I don't think they did permitting because it was already the permit. I think they overpassed the permit.
I don't know.
But the way I
It's still
think
a
that
question to
was
ask.
done, first, the creative part, I
Mhm.
think they chose like teams. Okay, you're doing the bridge, you're
Oh, for sure.
doing the Marie Antoinette, you're doing the other one, and then see how they all
Then you have the one
come
orchestrator
together.
pulling it all together, making
Correct.
it
One
beautiful.
orchestrator pulling it all together. So I
Yeah.
think there were different sets of cameras in
Oh,
every
for
single
sure.
corner of
Yes.
everywhere they went. But coordinating that everything flowed, that must have been.
Well, I think that just also underscores the difference. And I actually talked to a client in LA about this last week. We had lots of thoughts to share about the importance of having an event producer and not just a AV person and not just an AV tech, right?
No, I
Like,
think there
and not
was
just a
a whole
videographer. Like you
committee
need
on the
that
top.
role of an event producer is so important because they can see that television and they should be producing it like it is a show, right? There will be technical people and there'll be videographers that have this wonderful vision or even cinematographers, right? It started with Steven Spielberg at the very beginning of everything. Like, so it shows that, but I think making sure like people see event producers bring a lot to being able to see that larger 30,000 foot vision and make sure that it comes to life.
So the other part that people were most talking about
There's the
was
elephant in the
the
room.
famous runway.
Yes.
Okay, the way I saw it, the way I saw it was that yes, it was a runway. Paris is known for being over the top in fashion. And whether we like the fashion or don't like the fashion, I'm okay with that. But I really thought that the table was represented by every single person, color, identity, everything.
Which is part of what the problem was for some people.
Correct. That was a problem. And I don't think they even it had anything to do with the Last Supper, which was
So I can 100% see why people interpreted that way. I can see some of the very, like, there were parallels there, right? I do believe they were there. The difference is, again, let's go back to a history, and there were a lot of Greek symbols also in
yes.
that. There's a
I
lot
think
of
it was more of a Greek
Bacchanal
enhancing what
is
the Olympics is what about based on versus more on religion.
I don't think it was about religion at all. And I think if you
Correct, but a
know
lot
what
of
the
people took it
designer,
out of
right.
context
Well,
and they
because
said,
I do believe like I can see why they saw that. Because if you are someone that is a deeply religious Christian person, I believe like I can absolutely see you're like, wait a minute, what is happening right here?
I
But I do
didn't.
think no, I can see it. I'm not saying I agree with it. I can see it. What I'm saying the next step is that if you also looked at what a Greek bacchanal looks like, which was the interpretation of this, it is also a very long table with, again, let's not forget the blue guy, like y'all, that
Yeah,
was Bacchus, the god of wine. Like, this is not just some big man. They painted to look like a blueberry. Like, it was really strategic. But again, you have to
correct.
know history and European history in order to understand that. And I think that's where the disconnect is people saw, as we as humans tend to do, what they wanted to see. And we're like, oh, no, I'm done with this. I'm done with it. As opposed to, do I really
Wait,
understand?
let us find out what it is
Right.
about.
And then let's say, like, okay, let's take that, to the next step and say that you still thought it was just too much. Well, guess what? This was for a world stage, not an American stage. And the world does not have these same interpretations or these same, I would say,
Correct.
pearl clutching moments around modesty and around what you can and cannot do in art. Right? If we look at even the Last Supper, let's not forget, it was an artistic interpretation of an event written in a book. It was Leonardo da Vinci's interpretation of this. He was not alive when this happened. Like,
Correct. Yeah, it was an
so
interpretation
it's
and
an
yeah,
it's an artistic interpretation.
an
So the
artistic.
whole show across the board is an artistic interpretation of what people wanted it to be. Now, whether the creative director was strategically like, I want to push the envelope because that's what art does, is it pushes the envelope to do exactly what this did, get people talking. Or they just saw it as like, hey, we want to do this incredibly over the top, creative, multicultural, diverse thing. And oh shit, some people interpreted it wrong. Well, they
I
came out
don't think,
saying
I
that.
think it was the first part.
I think it's just art
Yeah.
is always open to interpretation, and artistic expression is meant to push boundaries across the board. And
The
some
other
people,
part that I
I
thought
don't think anything about it
was,
was intentionally religious. I think it was just miscommunication.
no, correct. I think it was more artistically than intentionally set out to offend anyone.
Yeah. Well, because it's just it was. I think that's actually a bigger theme that I'm noticing across the Olympics. Because another big conversation, at least it's been happening more on the marketing like side of things, is the ads and the commercials. Because we're have these gaps. You're watching on Peacock. There's like these big sections of just one ad after another, and then it goes back to the games. And there's a consistent theme I'm seeing across what brands are doing, which is focusing on what the Olympics is all about, is inclusion and diversity. This is
Right.
people who speak a whole bunch of different languages, who look various different sizes, from like the very stereotypical, but like the very teeny tiny, gymnasts that are coming out of China compared to our very large rugby players. Like, different sports require different body types, and we're going to speak different languages. So any sport you're listening to, they're interpreters. There are whole, things being dubbed in different languages around the world. And I think the opening ceremonies really set the tone for that, of like, there's a lot of French culture here, but we are here to celebrate diversity. And it still led as
Sports.
it did with, yeah, in sports, but I think
Good.
in life is the larger message. It's like we need to celebrate diversity. We need to stop being scared of this. And I think the rest of the world is not nearly as scared of it as we are, unfortunately, in this country. But I appreciate that on a world stage, there was a chance to push a boundary, and they did, but it all tied back to history. I mean, down to the fact, you notice who led the athlete parade? It was the Greeks.
Yeah.
Greece leads it. It doesn't matter where it is.
It
If
doesn't
art
matter where
history,
it is.
they're
Correct.
always the first. So it's
But
like
they
that
also
nod to the
incorporated,
culture.
I thought this one was the first one that when the torch was passed from one to the other, they incorporated um legends from all over.
Again,
And then they
inclusion.
finished with their French. athletes. But at the beginning, they literally united the whole world by bringing people from other countries, which I thought was really nice.
I thought that part was great. I really think there's been a lot of very strong moments of diversity is a good thing. Inclusion is wonderful. And like the Olympic Games as a whole are supposed to bring individual countries together, but also the athletes together, right? Like the athletes within a sport, they may compete against each other, but like look at what happened with the women's gymnastics.
Oh,
Like, the two Americans were on the silver and the bronze, and they're like, dude, she earned the gold. Yeah, we'll bow down to her. Like, we'll salute her. That's awesome.
she went and gave her a hug. That was the
Yeah.
first thing that she did, which
And
was amazing.
it's a wonderful spotlight on, I think,
Yeah.
what we as Americans really need this year in particular of like, we have to look at the bigger message and being united as we can be. We are diverse and we may be different. People interpret things differently, but different doesn't mean bad. And that's kind of
Correct. It
what
means agree to disagree and having a really good conversation.
yeah. Well, it just means it's different. You don't like that artistic express. Like, I don't like heavy metal. It doesn't mean that it was a
But I
bad
thought
performance. It just
that the
meant I didn't like it.
combination, I thought the combination of the moment that they did was the perfect music. For example,
Oh,
the other
totally.
part that I loved was the horse at the end.
Yeah.
That was amazing, and that was effects,
So,
and the other part was the logistics of coordinating that when they first started, it was daylight.
mhm.
Up to when they finished and everything, they lit the torch, it was also night. So coordinating all those things.
Well, which leads to my other big beef with this ceremony. Way too long.
But they had to wait until all the athletes passed in a boat.
Then they should have moved those boats a little bit faster and not put them in spaced out. Well, because I looked at this and as much
But
as
all the
I
Olympics are too long.
it's just too long. Like, because you also, let's take a step back and think about who is it that they're trying to reach? Everyone, whether you care about sports or not, people tune into the Olympics. Well, this sets the tone for that. And as much as I loved watching the production and some of the performances, I also thought, like some of my favorite movies, that was a very cool production. I could have loved it in half the amount of time that they took as
No,
well,
no, I agree with you.
right? Like
That
some of them were
part,
just very, very long.
it was too long and but they needed to put a lot of things into it while the athletes were parading the whole thing.
But
The
they
other,
also, like Ariel, look at that view. Those boats were really far apart and they were going real slow. I
okay,
just think
so you would have
could have
gone a
ticked
little
a little
faster.
faster and gotten them across the board. Like they
Okay.
totally deserve the spotlight. I get
But
you
you
need.
know what? That's another cultural aspect.
No,
Americans
I'm not
like
asking for
more
nothing. That's not culture.
fast.
That's America. That's everyone. We want things shorter, but like 3.5 hours plus. Like, come on now. Like, you could
It
do
was
a
long.
pretty good
But
job in 2 hours. I
the
believe. I
other
challenge
part
the
that I
next event producer. Do it.
the,
You can do
the
it.
other part that I really loved was that when it is at a stadium, you have limited amount of people that go in and experience it. Here, everyone was able to experience.
So
Whether you were on the streets, whether you had a
on the
friend that had
balcony,
a balcony,
yes.
everyone. And they brought in the people that the vendors that sold the sandwiches
Yeah.
right there while you were watching. So
I it is I think another reference point is that it reminds me a lot of one of the things that I love about New Orleans and Mardi Gras in particular. There is no barrier like to a 10-day parade and enjoy the spectacle that is being put on. There's no barrier to entry. You just have to go to the street. End of that, right? And I think
okay.
this makes something that being an Olympian is incredibly inaccessible for 99% of the population. So this made
And
that, like to your point, that element much more accessible for people. Like what talk about a lifetime, like once in a lifetime experience to just be along the river and get to see
But
Olympians
I
come.
think that's why they extended it so much, to give the people that were there the whole experience, to enjoy it, and not just a 2 hour event. So I think that was
Valid. I would love to, like, I have so many questions for all of the people that I'm never going to get answers to, but it's a valid point. You could be right. I'm just, on my
that it
team,
was
like,
planned
I don't have that
because
kind of
they
patience.
needed the whole to extend and give the experience of everybody that actually flew there, that were there, that
Maybe.
were using the local restaurants.
So I want to ask, what do you think about the final, like the finale? What did you think about Celine being the one to like make
Oh,
her
I
big
loved it.
return and all the comeback? Like, did you get the chills? Like, I'm getting them just by
Totally the chills, but before that, the song that has been like a tradition in all the Olympics is Imagine. And
hmm
it was done in a little boat, but it was raining. And the guy kept on playing the piano and the drops, and nothing happened. Like they kept on singing, he kept on playing, nothing was interrupted.
Which I think is great. Like, it's the epitome. I mean, what is old? I don't know. It's theater, Broadway. Like, the show must go on.
The show must go on. That's why.
Go on.
Celine Dion, I thought it was beyond amazing.
Okay, so what was your
Like,
biggest oops? What do you think was the biggest thing that was like, how could they have made that mistake?
how could they have made that mistake?
There were mistakes. There's one that stands out, screams to me that I'm like, it's so simple, but it's a big one.
Wait, I'm thinking now and everything positive. But
So here's the teachable moment from this. The flag was upside
oh,
down.
the flag was upside down. Yes, that was the oops.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
it
This
was
is
that
the
one.
symbol, the brand for this whole big thing.
They
And
folded,
someone
yeah.
didn't put a sticker or a something that said top.
They
Like,
folded, no, they folded upside down because they did unfold. I literally went back and look at
yeah,
it, and they unfolded it very careful. So the mistake was on the person that folded the flag.
very possible. But there should have also been a very clear, like, put a red dot to
But
symbolize
that
something.
was a human
It was
mistake.
it was. I'm not saying it was the worst thing. I'm saying it is absolutely a human mistake. But here's the thing, and this is like communications, marketing lesson, business lesson across the board.
You cannot have that mistake.
The bigger the stage, the bigger the prep. So if you are going to have this amazing event with all these people, if someone is going to pay you a crazy amount of money to do something, you got to make sure you
But
are triple checking
think
your things.
I think that was a mistake that they overlooked because it was a very simple thing. Okay, give me the flag and I'll put it on.
It was a simple thing, but it was the symbol of the thing.
Of
That's what made it
I
a big
get it,
moment.
and I think the person responsible for actually putting the hooks
Yeah.
didn't look.
Oh, I completely agree with you, but I'm saying it's something that should not have happened. That's
And
the
a
lesson.
lot of
Like,
people,
you
like
double
all the dancers and everything, they had to go and perform live at one time. They were not able to rehearse
that
at
was,
the actual place.
yeah, that was evident in a few of the performances. The dancers were not as
So
in
because
sync
they
as I would have
performed, they
liked.
rehearsed on another
Yeah.
scenario, and this was like the first time that they were gonna do it live. So that was risky. I think that was too risky for me.
I think it showed, unfortunately. I
The
assume there were just time constraints and it's like we're gonna do the absolute best we can, but especially once I saw that mint performance with the thing, like some of the dancers beforehand not being on beat or collectively in as in sync as I would expect, like just think we need a little more rehearsal time. Bigger the
because
stage,
they
bigger the prep.
couldn't do it on the venue.
But it's not,
Remember?
yeah, it could be that. I think there's a lot of different factors. Like we can't answer everything. It's very easy to be like a Monday morning quarterback, but I think it's just it is. I watch all of them like little details, yes, and they are things that event people will probably be the only ones that notice that I'm going to sit here and pick this apart. But if you are in events and you are in business, bigger the stage, the bigger the prep. Because it's true if you're going to do a live speaking event and you have to
With
protect,
anything.
right? If you are doing this, if you're doing anything, it's like you're going to get up on a big stage. The bigger the stage is, the more you should prepare. The bigger the client meeting, the more you should prepare ahead of time. So you're really on your game and you have to protect your brand. That's the thing that to me that stood out from the flag standpoint is like that was a very big, it was a small human error, but it was a very big error for the brand. And if it was my flag that
Because
was coming out upside down on the world, oh, there would be lots of phone calls and probably some adult words used in private before I had a nice calm conversation with the person who made the error.
but you're totally right in that sense. But I was thinking, for example, okay, during the opening ceremony, it started to rain really bad.
Mhm.
So there was no plan B. Like
Yeah.
literally, there was no plan B. So they really had to risk the whole thing, rain or shine.
See, that's why I'll stay on the marketing communications brand side of these things and let y'all handle the actual execution because that is a level of stress I would not want. Making sure the brand is well represented and that our communications team is on the ball if something goes awry or people start yelling, like you make a statement. You make a quick statement, we are evaluating things, we will get back to you. And then you get the more prepared statement. But
Yeah,
the
but
longer you were quiet, the more people had to talk and distort the message. And I think that's where that whole thing got very out of hand.
and with that, we could stay here forever and like literally
True.
take it apart,
Yes.
every single detail. But with that, we have to go. So everyone, thank you. And until next week, I hope you're all safe and there will be peace in the world.
Yes,
Have
indeed.
an amazing day.
Thank you.